Welcome everyone to the Town of Greater Napanee regular session of council for the 25th day of February 2025. Just before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that this evening's meeting is being televised via our YouTube channel, or live streamed, I guess, and it'll be on the YouTube channel after this evening for quite a long time. So the folks that are watching at home, welcome. Folks that are here in our council chambers, welcome. And welcome to those folks that are going to watch at a later date. So we've got a fairly heavy agenda tonight, so we'll get going. Look for a motion to, we'll call the meeting order and we'll look for a motion to rise and report from our closed session meeting that we had earlier this evening. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Norrie. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? The motion is carried. I would like to report that in closed session this evening, Council approved the closed session minutes of February 11th and received a report regarding a human resources matter and gave direction to staff. And coming out of closed session, I'd also look for a motion that Council approve the employment of Sean Armstrong as full-time fire chief and that the acting designation be removed from his title effective immediately, and further that this change be ratified by bylaw at our next regular session of council. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'd just like to congratulate Chief Armstrong. You've been a welcome addition to our organization for the time that you've been here in an interim or an acting position. And we're more than happy to have you here on a full-time basis. And we know that you're going to do us well with respect to the organization. So thank you, sir. All the best in the future. And we look forward to working with you. Having said all that, if there's nothing else, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion's carried. We'll look for a motion for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. This evening, we're going to start off our meeting with a public meeting under the authority of the Planning Act, and we'll look for a motion to convene the public meeting this evening. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Norrie. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? The motion's carried. First matter on our agenda this evening is a public meeting with respect to Staikos Homes legal part of lot 45, concession 1, former Township of Richmond, part 4 on plan 29R-3001 with a public address of 458 Bridge Street West. And the purpose of this public meeting is for the creation of a subdivision. Now, I know that we have a number of folks here in the council chambers this evening, probably to listen, but if you want to speak for or against this evening, we'll give you that opportunity. What we'd like to do is we'll have Mr. Nobes go through his presentation. I believe we may have a planner as well that will go through their presentation. We'll give council an opportunity to ask some questions, but we'll also give the folks that are here, if they have any questions that comes out of all this information you're going to get this evening, we'll give you an opportunity. We just have to get you to come to the front and we can give you the rules of engagement. You got to push the button. You got to talk through the microphone just so the folks at home can hear what you say, because I'm sure they'll be interested as well. So having said all that, we'd like to start with Mr. Nobes. So Mr. Nobes, the floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Council. So this is the public meeting, the statutory public meeting associated with Plan of Subdivision Application PLSUBD 2024-013. And it is related to a proposed subdivision by Staikos Homes, who are being represented tonight by RFA Planning Consultant. And Mr. Dale Egan will be coming up to the microphone very shortly to run through a presentation introducing the application. I should also note that a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment application PLZACO 2024-014 was submitted along with the draft plan of subdivision application. And the applications seek approval for the construction of 19 single detached dwellings and 24 semi-detached dwelling units, in total for 43 dwelling units, located just to the northwest of the existing built-out limits of the Westbridge Estates subdivision. The proposal would see access from Bridge Street as well as access through Ashwood. Ashwood Crescent, or Ashwood Drive rather, which is located between the two existing homes. There's a stub road connection there, and this would see the extension of that road into the heart of this proposed plan of subdivision. Additionally, there's stormwater management features and parkland that is proposed at the southerly end of the site. So at this point, I would invite Mr. Dale Egan to come up to the podium and run through his presentation on behalf of Staikos Homes.
Great, thanks, Michael. Welcome, Mr. Egan. And I don't know if we've met or not before, but I'll just give you, I guess you've got a PowerPoint presentation that our staff will give you an opportunity to help you out get going through that. With respect to the microphone, you have to push the button on the right-hand side and you have to hold it down. If you don't hold it down, then the folks at home can't hear what you have to say, and I'm sure that there'll be some folks at home that want to hear your presentation. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours, and welcome, and we look forward to what you have to say. Yeah, you've got to hold it, yeah.
Good evening, Council, and thanks, Michael, for the introduction. My name's Dale Egan. I'm a registered professional planner and a planner with RFA Planning Consultant in Belleville. I'm here tonight, as Michael had mentioned, to provide a presentation and overview on applications for a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for 458 Bridge Street West. So the subject lands are owned by Staikos Homes. Staikos Homes is a local developer and home builder in the region. Staikos have been building homes in the region since 1971 and has been the home builder for the West Bridge Estates subdivision directly to the west of this, or east story of this property. RFA was retained by Staikos Homes in 2022 to provide professional planning services related to these applications. On the slide here, the subject lands are highlighted in red on this aerial image. The property is located on the south side of Bridge Street West and west of Ashwood Crescent. The site has 106.8 meters of frontage on Bridge Street West and 20 meters frontage on what is referred to as Sierra Drive, which is a stub road connecting to the rest of the West Bridge Estates subdivision. The site has an area of 4.54 hectares, and the property was recently cleared with a couple buffers left along the east property line and along the water course. The subject lands are again highlighted here in red on this aerial image, which gives a greater context of the surrounding area. To the south of the site, there are environmentally sensitive lands surrounding a tributary of the Napanee River, a municipal park, and the Trans-Northern Pipeline. To the north of the site, there are rural residential uses and agricultural uses. To the west of the site, there are limited residential uses with vegetated areas and some agricultural uses. To the east of the site, there are residential uses from previous phases of the West Bridge Estate subdivision. So this slide provides a quick overview of the proposed plan of subdivision and the ultimate development. I will briefly touch on this development right now. I will come back to it later on in the presentation. So this slide, basically, there are 19 single detached dwelling units proposed. That can be seen in the very light yellow color. And then there are 24 semi-detached dwelling units proposed as well. And that can be seen in the orange color on the slide. There is an environmental protection area, which basically constitute a 30-meter setback from the water course, which crosses the property. And that is intended to be used as passive parkland at some point in time. There's also a block intended for open space. Access is proposed from Bridge Street West and the stub road leading from the previous phases of West Bridge Estates. A new municipal street is also proposed with a sidewalk, and development is intended to occur on full municipal services for this development. So in terms of policy context, I'm going to overview of the provincial planning statement, the county's official plan quickly, and then go into some details on the town's official plan and zoning bylaw. So the provincial planning statement focuses growth and development within settlement areas. The subject lands are located within the town of Greater Napanee urban area, which is identified as a settlement area, and growth and development is intended to be focused in these settlement areas. The site will be serviced with full municipal services, which is the preferred method of servicing in the provincial planning statement. Proposed development is consistent with the provincial planning statement. So this slide provides an overview of the county's official plan. Essentially, the subject lands are designated within the county's official plan as urban area. The county's official plan provides a high-level, basically, overview in the urban areas. The county's official plan is intended to basically deal with matters that cross municipal boundaries. On this slide, it's an excerpt from the town's official plan. It shows that the subject lands are designated as medium density residential and environmentally sensitive. The subject lands are highlighted in red on this slide. This designation allows for low density residential uses, which includes single and semi-detached dwellings. The applications propose a mix of semi-detached and single detached dwellings, which are compatible with the adjacent Westbridge Estate subdivision. No development will occur within 30 meters of the watercourse on site. The proposed development conforms to the policies of the town's official plan. So on this slide, the subject lands are highlighted in black. Within the town zoning bylaw, the property is zoned as rural and environmental protection zone. No development is proposed within environmental protection zone. The environmental protection zone is actually intended to be expanded as a result of the zoning bylaw amendment and the draft plan of subdivision. A zoning bylaw amendment is required to facilitate development, and I will explain that just shortly. So this development started in 2022, and a number of supporting studies were identified by the town in order to submit a complete application. So we've just listed the number of studies here. So a stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment was conducted, along with an environmental impact study, a traffic brief, and then a servicing study along with the stormwater management report. So to get to where we are today, we have undertaken a number of background studies in order to help support the proposed development. And then I'll briefly touch on each of these. I won't try and go too far too in depth with these, but I'll just overview. And if anyone has any questions later on, please feel free to ask. So there's a stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment that was conducted on the site. It essentially included a field investigation, which determined that the site has no archaeological potential. On November 27th, of 2023, a clearance letter was issued by the Ontario Public Register of Archaeological Reports, confirming that the report was submitted and that the property no longer contains archaeological potential. And then an environmental impact study was also conducted by the Ainley Group. So the EIS has concluded that there will be no impacts on significant features. The EIS has provided a number of recommendations and mitigation measures which can be implemented through a future subdivision agreement between the developer and the town. And then a traffic brief was also conducted by the Ainley Group. The Ainley Group actually did all of the engineering for this, so I won't continue to say that they did these studies, but that's who the engineer for this project was. So essentially, the traffic brief concluded that the proposed increased traffic as a result of the development can be accommodated within the existing traffic network. A servicing study was also conducted, which reviewed the proposed servicing for the development. Essentially, the new infrastructure that's required within the proposed development will be a 200 millimeter water main, along with a 200 millimeter sanitary sewer, and then a 300 millimeter storm sewer, sorry. The stormwater management essentially proposes that the grading of the site will come from Bridge Street West and then to the south of the site where the stormwater management pond's located. There will be swales and storm sewers used on the development, and the stormwater management has reviewed the level of quality and quantity control required for the development. So back to the Planning Act applications. The Planning Act applications we have submitted are for a draft plan of subdivision. The draft plan of subdivision is to create all the lots and the blocks and the road infrastructure here. And then there's also a zoning bylaw amendment submitted, which is proposing to rezone the property in order to facilitate the proposed development. So this slide shows the draft plan of subdivision. It shows the the proposed municipal street along with the proposed cul-de-sac. It also illustrates the lots 1 to 19, which are intended for single detached dwellings. It includes blocks 20 to 31, which are intended for semi-detached dwellings. Block 32 at the south end of the development is intended for open space, and block 33 is intended for stormwater management. Block 34 is intended for a future municipal road allowance, which would connect to the west if development is ever proposed over there, or if the urban boundary is ever expanded. So essentially, the proposed draft plan of subdivision would include 43 new dwelling units, 19 of those being single detached dwellings, and 12 blocks for semi-detached, which would total 24 semi-detached units. So in conjunction with the draft plan of subdivision application, we have submitted an application for zoning bylaw amendment as well. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the rural zone to a residential type 4 exception zone and a residential type 2 exception zone. The residential type 4 exception zone is shown on the screen here, which is the north end of the site. That is the area that's intended for single detached dwelling or semi-detached dwelling, sorry. The R4 zone basically seeks a site-specific zone to keep in character with the development to the east. The R2 exception zone is for single detached dwellings, and that also requests site-specific exceptions to keep in character with that development to the east. There is an environmental protection zone shown on the south end of the site as well. That's intended to encompass the stormwater management block along with passive park area, and it will also provide a buffer to the water course. So the applications for draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment are required to facilitate phase 12 of the Westbridge Estates subdivision. The applications are consistent with the provincial planning statement and conform to the policies of the town's official plan. The draft approval of these applications will allow for the future build out of the Westbridge Estates subdivision and add additional housing units within the town of Greater Napanee. Thanks.
Great, thanks, sir. Just hang tight. We'll start with council. Does council have any questions or comments for either Michael or Mr. Egan with respect to the report or the presentation? Go ahead, Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Egan, thanks a lot for coming in tonight and speaking to us in regards to this. Just have a question for you. When was that traffic study actually conducted? I see that on the report it says November of 2024, but it was never really stated when the actual report was conducted.
Thank you. So as I had mentioned, this started in 2022, this application. We submitted back in, I believe it was around April of 2024, roughly. So the traffic study had been conducted April 2024, and it was revised multiple times leading up to 2025. I do believe November of 2024 would be the accurate date. Just because it was revised so many times, I'm not 100% sure on what the final date was. I will also mention that all of those supporting studies were peer reviewed by the municipality before we got to this public meeting today.
Okay, thank you. If I may continue.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Patel.
As the ward representative for this area, there's been some concerns brought to my attention regarding traffic and speeding and stuff, and this has not too much to do with your project. But when you come out of Sierra Drive, majority of traffic, if they're going to be coming that way, they will be turning right and coming down to that part of Cherrywood, which I would be putting in a request that we've been talking about this for a long time now and have that turned into a 3-way stop, because I do believe that there's going to be more traffic there. And with the school bus pickup and stuff, this is something that's got to happen. And as we go further into this project as well, and we'll talk about the other project that's on the slate for tonight, is that I see that there's no provision for a stoplight at Cherrywood and Bridge Street. It shows a stop sign. And my question for this is that there's no stop, there's no slow in traffic from Desron Road all the way to the hospital at Richmond Drive. And then there's no stop on Bridge Street from that location all the way to Center Street. There used to be a stop sign that was taken out at Belleville Road. Traffic is at a speed where it's starting, and it might, the results might show differently, but if you actually are in that traffic, it's hard to get out of, it's hard to back out of if you live on Bridge Street. And with the addition of this traffic and with the other project, I think now, even though that the studies don't show that we need a traffic light there, we need to have a better look at this, to not necessarily always just go by what the numbers are saying, but actually what is actually happening there, because the traffic is hard and fast. And I believe that there's going to be room for accidents there, somebody wanting to pull out and stuff. So I'll leave it with that. I see Mr. Nobes would like to comment on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Pennell. I would note that the concern at Bridge and Cherrywood certainly is understood. I would note that through the transportation and servicing municipal class EA work that was done, the anticipation when there is the future extension of Cherrywood up to Jim Kimmett, when that is completed, the anticipation is that there would be a roundabout installed at that intersection. And so what we'll talk about in the next public meeting is that the developer would be providing road widening and providing protections from development within proximity to a future roundabout at that location. It wouldn't be necessitated based on the numbers from traffic studies immediately from this project and the one that's forthcoming. But as the area broadly develops out and that connection to Jim Kimmett is installed, it would be appropriate to install a roundabout at that location. And for that northerly extension of Cherrywood Parkway, that would become a county of LNA road. So it would be a matter of the county undertaking that work to install that roundabout. And so they've been in the loop the entire way through the review of the other application where that intersection is located, and that certainly has been considered. And in the interim, the studies show that there is not yet a need for a traffic signal at that intersection based on the numbers alone. However, I would note that further east at Richmond Park Drive and at Bridge Street, when the lands, if council recalls, there is a draft approved plan of subdivision at what would result in the extension of Richmond Park Drive to the north of Canvers Way beyond the former rail line. At the full build out of that subdivision, there would be a justified need for traffic lights at that intersection. So the costing associated with that has been built into our existing development charge background study. So we are collecting to fund the installation of traffic lights at that location at some point in the future when they're warranted. But certainly point taken, point heard, and staff have been considering that concern in addition to the county as we reviewed both of these applications in the area.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate this, and I'm sure that the people sitting here tonight are appreciative of the explanation as well, because it is a huge concern. Again, this is way down the road, but traffic circle there might impede some of the houses that live there now, but that's for drawing, and we can see that. But I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other questions or comments for either Michael or Mr. Egan with the presentation or the report? Seeing none. Folks that are in the body of the council chambers, is there anyone here that would like to ask any questions or would like to provide any statements? Okay, sir, what we're going to get you to do is when you come to the front, we have to get your name for the record. And what'll happen is like it'll be the same as what Mr. Egan did, is when you push the button, you have to hold the button so the folks at home can hear what you have to say, because they'll want to hear. So you'll see on the microphone in front of you, there's a button that says talk. You have to push it and hold it. So we'll start off by getting your name for the record.
Hi, my name's Lee Jellison. I live on Ashwood Crescent here in Napanee.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm here on concerns of when I bought my home, I was told I was buying on a green space, and we did all our due diligence. We thought we did. We checked with the town. We had our realtor check. We checked with our neighbors, and they all said, yeah, we're on a green space. There's nothing to worry about there. Then all of a sudden they come cut all the trees down, and we asked what's going on. So then we're quite concerned about, wait, now we're not on a green space. Then we were told that they're going to leave us 15 feet of green space there. I want to know if that is still going to be true or not. Or are all those trees going to be cut down behind our homes? And other people on our street paid extra to be on a green space. And seeing Staikos built their homes, they would have known that was going to be a green space. This is not I was only in my home for 8 years now. But they were told by other people on my street that they paid extra for their lots to be on a green space. And now we're not on a green space. How is that affecting us?
We'll, I don't know if Mr. Nobes or Mr. Egan can take a stab at that. We're going to try and address that this evening, but we have your name, and we could probably reach out to you if we haven't got an answer for you. So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, sir. And your name is?
My name is Nat Pearson. I'm with Staikos Homes. I'm a project manager, and so I handle the land development. So with respect to any communication to buyers at the time that they bought their house, I cannot speak to that. I've been with Staikos for 9 years. I wasn't with the organization when you would have bought your house. I know that we've had this come up on other developments where I know for a fact that we've explained to buyers that they are backing onto lands that could be developed in the future and that we don't have any idea of the timeline on that. So I can speak to that for other areas. I cannot speak to it factually about this. So I can't address that part of it. The part I can address is the intent of leaving the buffer. If you saw on the plan, we left some extra depth on the lots that back onto Ashwood, and we left a 5-meter strip. And the intent was to leave as many of those trees as possible. We've had to cut down some of those trees because some of the people that live on Ashwood have called us to say the trees are dead and they're concerned that they're going to fall in their backyard. So we have removed some additional ones out of a direct request from homeowners. But the plan is to maintain that buffer, maintain it as treed as possible, with the understanding that, we're moving forward with land adjacent to people that are already living in houses.
So you're saying that the rest of the trees that are there now, basically, unless they were dead, are going to stay there. And that's going to be a buffer zone between my backyard and the next person's backyard.
That is correct. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming out this evening and asking the questions. And I think we had another hand up, sir. So come on up. As we move through this, you'll find it gets easier because we don't have to explain it as much. Again, the microphone's in front of you. You've got a button on the right-hand side that says talk. If you could just push it and hold it so the folks at home can hear. And before we get started, we just need to get your name.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Darren McFarland. I live at 450 Bridge Street West. And so just a question and a comment through you, Chair. Planner Egan had stated that one of the intentions of this development was to keep the character, and I quote, keep the character of the development to the east. I was one of the purchasers early on in the development. I bought 2 lots and built a home not through Staikos, but through Stinson Homes prior to many of the other homes being built. And myself, along with my neighbors that have bought right now along Bridge Street West, have actually all built single dwelling homes. They were not duplex or double, semi-detached, sorry. So I guess when I look at the subdivision plan, it's very clear that no doubt the higher cost properties are buried further into the new cul-de-sac, and the semi-detached are all closer to Bridge Street. And I guess that is a concern that we've been talking about. All the homes right now that's currently line Bridge Street West, as in the earlier phase of the project, are all single dwelling. And then now you're dropping in semi-detached homes and you're moving the single dwelling further down. So again, just thinking about, we invested in our community. We built single dwelling homes with the intention of maintaining property values. It's a beautiful drive. I know many of you have taken it, and it is a concern. I know Staikos built an incredible home. However, it is concerning around the property values in terms of putting semi-detached with single dwelling, as we know there is a variance there. So just wanted to bring that up. That's a concern.
Thank you, sir. And that's what this evening is about. So we appreciate that. I don't know if Michael or if Mr. Egan can comment on it, but I do know that we are taking note of it. That's why we're having this meeting tonight. So yeah, go ahead, Mr. Egan. I think you can comment on it.
Thank you. So in terms of singles and semi-detached, within the town's official plan, they're both considered low-density residential uses, and that's what is being proposed here. The addition of semi-detached dwellings within this plan of subdivision, that just adds another home ownership option. They're both still classified as low-density residential uses, so they are really compatible with the surrounding area, in my opinion. Yes, it's not singles to singles, but there is, it's really not any more dense than, you know, if you're adding a bunch of townhouse units or something like that. So in terms of compatibility, I'd be referring to density, not, you know, built form being the same as the built form. So it just adds another home ownership option.
Great. Thank you, sir. Is there anything else? Yeah, come on up, sir. If you've got a comment or a question, we're here to listen to it. So like I say, the rules of engagement are is we'll get you to identify yourself and just make sure you push the button that says talk and hold it down when you're talking, because if not, I get all kinds of nasty phone calls and emails. So just get your name before we get started, sir.
It's Doug Pinnell. I live on Ashwood Crescent. My question is that 15 feet that they're allowing, when all is said and done, who owns it? Who controls it? Is it going back to the town, or is it going to be maintained by somebody? I don't know. The second part of my question is drainage. I back onto that property and I have a ditch in my backyard, which on occasion fills up, and on occasion, because of freeze thaw, will flood my backyard. Where's the drainage for the new subdivision going to go? Because I don't want it to come back on my property.
And I'm going to guess, sir, that may be a couple of fairly easy questions. Mr. Egan or Mr. Nobes, who wants to tackle that?
Mr. Pinnell, I do have a few of the lot grading plans that I can share with you after this meeting if you'd like to see it. Essentially, there's already a swale along your property line. I'm under the impression. There's going to be another swale proposed on our side, so there will be two swales essentially. So all these lots will drain into all the lots fronting like adjacent to your property. They'll have their own swale to convey water, and it will go to a separate stormwater management system.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Nobes can comment on who owns the property once these folks get done building.
Yep, through your worship, and as is proposed under the current draft plan included in the agenda materials, the ownership of the 15 feet of buffer area would be on each private property as identified on the plan of subdivision. The land is not intended to be conveyed to the town for infrastructure or drainage purposes. However, the town would have the ability through a future subdivision agreement to limit tree removals in that area through language within the actual subdivision agreement. So the town wouldn't take ownership of those lands, but we would be able to enforce the agreement against any future landowners that would be registered on title.
But who would own it?
Well, yeah, so the homeowner that buys the house would own it. But just further to Michael's point, the idea is that drainage swale that Dale was just referring to, the idea is that that is going to occur outside of that strip. So the strip is intended to really, that's why we built so much extra depth into those lots. So you're going to have the house, and then the person that buys that lot is going to have the same, if you picture it as the spot that's not the buffer is the same size as the people on the other side of the road. And the swale is outside of that buffer. So all the work that's required to deal with drainage and all that kind of stuff and to install that swale that will prevent water from going onto your property will be outside of that buffer. So that buffer actually stays as an undisturbed piece of land. But yes, it's not going to be owned by the town.
But that homeowner would have access to that property to do whatever they please.
Subject to restrictions in the subdivision agreement.
Okay. So I just need a copy of that. Because I find it hard to go through it. Because when we bought that property, and I'm one of the original owners, they said only single family dwellings will be built on that property. and they were talking estate lots at that time. And now they're talking duplexes. So I take point with the gentleman over here saying, I don't think duplexes were ever intended to go in there. I just think it's a financial thing that Staikos is trying to do. So I would not be in favor of duplexes whatsoever.
Okay, no, that's great, sir. And thanks for coming out. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Nobes.
Through your worship, just a comment on the inclusion of semi-detached units. I would note that the provincial directive under the provincial planning statement is to provide a range and mix of housing opportunities per development. So it very much encourages different built forms of development, whether that be a mix of singles and semis, or singles and towns, or semis and towns, or what have you. The provincial direction on new development is to provide a range of options for potential homeowners. So that is what has essentially sparked the inclusion of the semis along with the singles in this proposed development.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks, Michael. Yep, come on up, sir. We'll give you, I know we got a long evening, but we'll give you one follow-up. How's that sound?
Hi, it's Lee Jellison again. Does that mean that person with that buffer zone, is that a buffer zone, or can they put their fence right against my fence? Is it a buffer zone or is it their property?
Michael can weigh in on that. I
Through
think.
your worship, technically it would be their property, so they could install a fence if they so chose. But as mentioned before, we have the ability to include limitations on removal of trees if deemed appropriate by council, that the trees wouldn't be able to be removed in order to build a fence, if that makes sense. So
it's not a buffer zone. You're just allowing the trees to stay there. So don't call it a buffer zone, because you're not leaving a buffer zone there. You're leaving the trees there. Their backyard is onto my backyard.
I think, sorry, go ahead, Michael. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So yeah, so really, yeah, we're calling it a buffer strip. Really what this comes out of is, we have a relationship with the people that bought on Ashwood. We understand that. And when we first, basically when we first started looking at this land, we received phone calls because, we were out there doing some preliminary work, and, everyone sees that and wants to know what's going on. So, we had many conversations with people, and we said, our intention is to build an extra depth in those lots so that we can maintain an undisturbed area. If we're going to get, terminology muddying the waters, that, it's not a preserved piece of land that the municipality takes over and has to maintain, because they don't want that either. What it is an opportunity for us to move forward with our development while respecting the people that bought there before to the best that we can under the restrictions that we're faced with.
Why don't you just not allow them to put fences on our fences? Tell them it's a buffer zone there. If you want to call it a buffer zone, tell the new owners that's a buffer zone. You got to build just outside your water drainage, which I understand will be in their yard.
Well, then you're going to have a fence with
And
a
a buffer zone.
and a buffer zone and a fence.
And a buffer
then
zone.
No one can get in there to cut the weeds down, and then you get upset because the weeds are spilling over into your property. And so
But it is now. It's been a green
Wow.
space since we did that.
that'll have to work its way out through the subdivision agreement, because that we're getting into a level of detail that doesn't usually get handled at this level.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else? If not, and again, obviously, there's some work to be done moving forward, and there's going to be an opportunity. If anybody else has any questions or comments, they're more, we can have them forwarded on to Mr. Nobes and his department. So, sir, did you have any question? Do you have a question there, sir, or a comment? Come on up. Yep. And like I say, we just got to get you to give us your name before you get started, and make sure you hold the button down so that the folks at home can hear.
David Stacy, 34 Angus Drive. I have a couple of questions regarding Block 164, considered the storm water pond. My first question would be, is it similar to the pond that is currently on Beverly Street behind the Parrot Center?
Yeah, go ahead.
Through your
Michael.
worship, this would be related to the application that would be next on the agenda.
Okay, so that's not with respect to this one, sir. So don't go away, because that's the one that's going to follow us next. So Yeah, okay, so I'm assuming that's the conversation we'll have later. So just hang tight. Is there anything else before we move on to the next application? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Michael and Mr. Egan, so here's my question. You mentioned that the lots are now, particularly on the east side of the subdivision, have been lengthened, not widened, but lengthened to accommodate the swale and and I'll use air quotes, buffer zone. And you mentioned weed control, that sort of thing. But so if I'm looking at lot number 4, single dwelling home, 47 meters in length, 5 meters of that would be left treed at the east end of the lot, right? And then how wide is the swale? And the swale would be to the west of the trees that are left remaining. Okay. How wide is the swale?
Through your worship, typically rear yard swales of this nature would be, you know, about that wide, yeah, meter-ish. Yeah, not extravagantly wide by any stretch.
And right now it's the birds and the bees and the wild parsnip and the dead ash trees and whatever is living there is living there. Is the intention to have manicured grass growing around the trees, or is the expectation of the existing homeowners that it will be left to the birds and the bees and the what have you? And then so not building, if your concern, sir, was not building the fence with 2 inches between okay. Which wouldn't make sense to me. I would think that you'd want the fence built on the west side of the swale. And then you have a nice level lawn to cut. And then the fence? Okay. So I'm just curious. I'll be interested to see how that all gets worked out in the subdivision agreement. Okay. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Michael and Mr. Egan. We're hearing some feedback, some pushback regarding the multi-use, sorry, I'm just flabbergasted here today, the multiple homes. And we have to change the zoning. We're asked to change the zoning from RU to R4. So there's an ask to council there to do this. Is there any way that we could do a proposal where we could look at, or maybe already have looked at, where you move these homes to the westerly portion of the road so that single family homes just back onto Ashwood, the existing homes, to possibly solve this issue?
Through your worship, I would defer to Staikos for comment on that, but I would say they might need to take a little bit more time just to reconsider if that might hamper their plans. I'm not sure if you can provide any comment on that at this point in time.
On a preliminary level, one of the things we looked at with the semi-detached homes was the actual topography of the site. So the northern part of the site is flatter than the southern part, and building the semi-detached homes and trying to, as they are wider than a single detached home, we're trying to avoid having to step down between, like, on the dividing wall between the two homes. If you can imagine a steep grade and you've got one house and the other house beside it, you're either going to have to add a bunch of steps on that lower house. And we're trying to accommodate, accessibility and all that kind of stuff. So topography came into play when we looked at how we were going to divide up the semis and the singles. I'm not saying it's not something we can't look at, but the other thing we looked at was just, keeping like with like across the street from each other when you start looking at driveways and all that kind of stuff. But it's not a non-starter, I wouldn't say, but it would require direction through Michael and planning for us to look at that. It's not necessarily something that makes sense from an engineering and a design perspective. So that's why we did it the way that we did it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other questions of council before we move on to our next matter? Go ahead, Mr. Nobes, and I'll go to Councillor Shank.
Through your worship, and just to Councillor Pennell. So I would echo Mr. Egan's comments around compatibility. So our official plan in the low density residential designation, it does permit singles and semis. So it's in alignment with policies and the density of development. So meaning the number of units per land area is very much in alignment with those policy limitations that we have in place today. So strictly from a policy perspective, it is certainly consistent with the policies that are in place. I'll consider the concern that council's brought up and Nat's comment regarding constructability, given the topography in the area, but we'll report back to council. But those are just some initial thoughts at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Thanks, Mr. Nobes. Councillor Shank.
Caught between a rock and a hard spot here because the provincial policy statement issues, it's a low density, and so you're stuck and we have to have our policy follow this. But common sense and the individuals that went ahead and had a great concern, all right, over their, there's no, of course you're going to sell a semi-detached a lot cheaper than you're going to sell a single family home. So it's going to have a definitely related effect on your single family home that you already currently have there. I don't live in an urban area, but with the 24 new residential, even though they're semi-detached, or 12 places that you're going to be having there, how would you expect that somebody who's put a lot of money into a single family home, all of a sudden now, even though it is low density and under the provincial policy, it's all under one class, it's very hard to tell a farmer that it's black and black, it's white's white. You know what I mean? You're going to sell another a low income, or not a low income, but semi-detached home is going to be a lot cheaper than a single family home. So of course it's going to affect that person's value of his land or his property that he's invested in. So what my concern is I know you're going and saying, trying to get the whole gamut of what's possibly out there. If you could sell a cheaper home and your margin, I can understand your margins of profit and this and that, but I'm stuck here because I know what legally what we have to take, but is there any way just looking at it, guys, and saying, what is your possibility of just having single family homes in a certain area? If you had one other area of a total all semi-detached, if you want to do, because you see a future road or future right-of-way going to a future possibility of another development, if you had all semi-detached in that area and leave this, which is conducive of what the subdivision is on the other side, all the single family homes, then, you know what I mean? That would be, I know you're not going to make the same margins, maybe not sell them as fast as the other ones, the way the economy is, but all I'm saying is it might be a whole lot happier over here. A happy customer gains you, what, 7, a ticked off one loses 40. So that's what I was thinking.
Thanks, Councillor Shank. I think Mr. Egan's going to comment, but I mean,
I just want to quickly comment on the policies, just to clarify a few things. So the property is currently designated under the official plan as medium residential. And essentially that would allow for some more dense uses. What Staikos has proposed is quite compatible. When you look at the net density for the site, it's at 15.75 units per hectare, whereas the official plan policies for this designation, allows for 60 units per hectare. So what Staikos has proposed is considerably less than what's permitted under the official plan. Semi-detached dwellings, they add some affordability for the buyer. If this was all about profit for Staikos, I'm sure they'd be cramming in townhouses and making the site a lot more dense than what they've proposed tonight.
And yeah, and just to add to that, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, when we were going through the pre-consultation process, the third-party planning consultant, would that be the right way to term them? They actually were pushing for more density based on the provincial policy statement, and Michael actually worked with us to push back against that. It wasn't, we didn't want to put townhouses up there. That wasn't our goal. The consensus, let's say, and the middle of the road approach that we agreed upon to be in conformance with the provincial policy statement and what the town wanted and what we wanted was the mix that we came up with.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks, Councillor Shank. And just to remind everyone, that's the reason we're here this evening, is to hear these comments and hear their concerns from everybody involved. So it sounds like we do have some more work to do on it, but I'm sure we'll be able to find some form of a resolution to it. So if there's nothing else, we'll move on to our next public meeting, which is very similar. Thanks, gentlemen. And Michael, did you want to start with respect to the Bridge Street Meadows Inc. part of Lot 16, concession to former Township of Richmond, Part 1 on Plan 29R 4360, address of 415, 427 Bridge Street West. And you're going to start, I think, Michael?
Yep, thank you, Worship. I'll do a very brief introduction, and I think we'll just wait for a few members of the public.
Yeah, we'll just allow some of the folks to clear the council chambers, and then we'll get started on the next public meeting.
And through you, Worship. So this evening, we also have a public meeting under the Planning Act, which is the statutory public meeting associated with draft plan of subdivision application PLSUBD 2022-080, official plan amendment application PLOPMA 2024-054, and zoning bylaw amendment application PLZACO 2024-055. And this is in relation to a proposed plan of subdivision located on the north side of Bridge Street West at the existing terminus of Cherrywood Parkway, which would see an extension of Cherrywood Parkway northerly and a connection over to Beverly Street easterly at the northerly end of this site. So it would be bordered by the town's former rail line in the very north and bordered by Bridge Street in the south. The application proposes a range of built forms, so a number of single detached homes, so 138 single detached dwellings and 124 townhouse dwellings, as well as a block of mixed use buildings, which would see a total of 10 live work units, so commercial ground floor and residential living space above. The application would see the construction of new public roads, new park space, as well as stormwater management features to accommodate the anticipated stormwater management flows as a result of the development. And at this point, I would invite Mr. Eric Bays of Stantec, who is representing Bridge Street Meadows, Inc., to the podium to run through his presentation for the application.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And good evening, sir. And you know the rules of engagement, push and hold the talk button. And we've got your name. And whenever you're ready.
Do I need to push and hold, or will it?
Yeah, you've got to hold it down, or the
Okay.
folks at home won't be able to
This
hear
will be
you.
an additional challenge because I'm a hand talker, so I'll wave my left hand. Thank you, council, for your time. Thank you, Mr. Nose, for the introduction. And I'd also like to apologize to everyone who is behind me, who is probably very interested in the presentation. I can't make eye contact with you, but I do welcome your questions afterwards. The application, the subdivision's been called Bridge Meadows subdivision. It's located at 415, 418 Bridge Street West. Just in terms of some of the items that we want to cover through here. So I want to talk about, it's a very similar layout to the previous application, talk about what the land use framework is already in terms of what is the intended use of the land by the town's official plan. I want to talk a little bit about existing conditions on the site, about the municipal class EA that is either underway or is completed. Thank you. I've been referring to it as the extension of Cherrywood Parkway, as the new road hasn't been provided a name yet. And then I'm going to go through the actual applications. So we have 3 planning applications that were submitted for this. The first is a plan of subdivision, which lays out the streets, the blocks, the parkland, and how the land will be used in different areas. The other is an official plan amendment, and that's to shift around some of the designations to match that subdivision. And the other is the zoning, which is what basically makes the rules for each one of those lots. We'll go through some of the supporting studies. I'm not going to go into too much detail in the presentation, but I'm happy to talk about any of those studies, and then just talk about where we are in the overall process and next steps. So just some kind of key components of this. The property owner is Bash Developments. They own lands in a number of smaller communities in Ontario. They're actually working on another project already here in Napanee off Old Hamburg Road. It's currently in the servicing stage, and they hope to have homes going up in the summer of this year. I am working for Stantec Consulting. We're an engineering and planning firm, and we're helping to support the coordination of the different facets of the approval. And then in terms of the site has frontage onto Bridge Street West. It's about 41 acres in total, and or 16.6 hectares. It's generally farm fields. There's 2 existing dwellings and a barn that's located on the property. It's immediately north of the intersection of Cherrywood Parkway. It's generally farm fields, and there is a creek or a water course that passes through the site. In terms of land use context, so the site is designated as part of the settlement area. It's intended for urban or suburban development like this. It's designated as both low density residential as well as medium density residential. So as the previous presenter mentioned, the low density residential designation is intended for singles and semi-detached dwellings. The medium density residential allows both of those uses, but it also allows townhouses, stacked units, and in limited circumstances, low-rise apartment building as well. I'll go back. There is one other designation, which is the environmentally sensitive designation, and that conceptually it follows along that creek corridor, and we'll return to that in the subdivision. There's another item that I wanted to bring up, and that is related to the pink dashed line on the previous official plan schedule. And that is about the municipal class environmental assessment for a number of arterial and collector roads that are proposed from Bridge Street to connect up to County Road 1 and to Jim Kimmett Boulevard. So one of the items that we'll see on the plan of subdivision, this EA was underway as the plan of subdivision was prepared, and we've made sure that the recommendations from that EA, which is to have a 40 meter wide right-of-way, which is not the actual size of the paved surface, road connecting from the intersection of Cherrywood and Bridge West all the way up to Jim Kimmett. So the first application is a plan of subdivision. So it's to develop into a new residential neighborhood. We're proposing to renaturalize the creek. Its current corridor is kind of poorly defined. There's a limited amount of regrading that needs to be done to allow for proper drainage, and some realignment to make sure that both the environmental corridor is maintained, but that there is some developability of the balance of the lands. There is I'll pull this one up here because it's a little bit easier to read than what we had before. So the lighter yellow is detached dwellings. Lots vary in size. The slightly more orange or slightly darker yellow would be townhouses. This would be 4 or 5 attached units. And then the areas that are green would be a combination of a new 0.87 hectare park, which is a little bit more than 2 acres. There'd be 2 storm ponds. The reason for the 2 storm ponds is because the creek runs through the middle of the site. It's a bit of a challenge to run stormwater pipes under a natural area. So the storm pond to the, I'll call it the left, even though it is on the right side of the property, is to service everything south of the creek. And then the one north of that is for the north side of the creek. We've also proposed what we are referring to as the mixed use block. That's block 161. And I have a slide that talks about that in a bit more detail to explain what's the thought behind that, and some of the other examples where this has been used in other communities, which is this one right here. So there's actually 2 components I wanted to highlight here. One is related to, you'll see there's 2 streets that are right beside each other here, and we're proposing what's called a window street. So the design of the arterial road, the Cherrywood Parkway extension, is as an arterial road. The county insists on limited access from from uses that are next to it, as well as making sure that intersections are spaced at least 200 meters apart from each other. Part of what the challenge is that comes up with that is our original concept included 2 roads that connect out, and this being what I'd call just a standard urban or suburban grid. They raise concerns with those 2 intersections being so close to both the Bridge Street intersection and each other. So we proposed this window street. It's used in other communities. The Springside Meadows is actually proposing one of them along the new Hamburg or old Hamburg road frontage as well. So it is something that has been designed and we'll be seeing here in the community as well. But this was one of our solutions to that concern that was raised through the review of the transportation. The other component to speak to is this live work unit block. So the way that we've sort of conceptualized live work is it's a type of built form that's been around basically as long as we've actually been building cities and towns. It's basically a townhouse, but instead of having all of your living space right on the ground floor, it's located on the second floor with the bedrooms above it, and your ground floor can be a flex space. So many people end up choosing to use it as an extra bedroom or an office space of some type, but you also have the option to use it for low intensity, compatible, small scale commercial uses. So, a good example of these that have been working for centuries would be a main street, just like in downtown Napanee. So we've developed a zone that proposes to make sure that these uses stay small scale so that they're compatible with the other uses that are around them. Things like barbershops, medical offices, artist studios. These are the type of small scale uses that the proposal is to provide people with the flexibility to carry on things that are maybe a little bit more than a home industry or a work from home situation, but not large enough to really need a commercial zoning. And when a use gets to that size, it's designed to make sure that it's capped. And if a business is successful enough, it starts to outgrow the space. There's lots of other opportunities in the city for successful businesses to continue to grow. So the official plan amendment, so the site already has designations for low density residential and medium density residential. What our proposal is to take that, which was generally at the southeast or the bottom left section of the site, and shift it to the west further. This surrounds the live work units as well as some of the places where the townhouses are proposed. The balance of the property would remain low density residential. We're also proposing to reconfigure the environment, remove the environmentally sensitive designation that's currently on the property and replace it with an environmental protection that matches the blocks that would be for the renaturalized creek. And then in terms of the zoning, so the site is currently zoned RU. That's because up until now it's been used as rural lands, despite it being designated for urban suburban development. So what we're trying to do is take the zoning and align it with what the official plan says. So the R3 zone permits detached dwellings of varying lot widths. The R5 zone would permit the townhouses, and you'll see that we've put letters after each one of them. That's because we're proposing certain tailored provisions for the site. And I can get into that in a little bit more detail after as well. Generally, it's about allowing slightly smaller lots to make more efficient use of the land, as well as to reduce corner side yard setbacks. Sorry, I'll go back one is here. So the other zones that we're proposing is environmental protection zone for the creek corridor, open space zones for the 2 stormwater ponds, as well as for the park block. This matches back to the live work units. one of the challenges that comes up with the zoning is that the one place in the city where live work units are permitted is the downtown. So there is permissions for both residential and commercial uses. But when you look at the built form that's permitted there, it's quite intense. It is the community's core. It allows taller buildings. It allows smaller setbacks, higher lot coverages, so more paved surfaces or larger buildings relative to the size of those lots. And that's not what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to provide something that is a little bit more intense, but still maintains vegetation, still maintains lower lot coverages, and to make sure that the building that's built there stays at an appropriate scale relative to the townhouses and the surrounding uses. So what we've done is we've taken the existing R5 zone and we're proposing to tailor it in certain ways to allow for these other uses, but also try and maintain that small scale that better fits with the community and the context. Finally, I'll go through supporting studies. So there is a number of studies that have been completed, both as part of the initial submission as well as our resubmissions. All of these have been reviewed by both either town staff or county staff or other consultants that have been doing third-party reviews. There's been some evolution based on that feedback, both of the design of the subdivision as well as some of the recommendations of the reports. Largely, they remain the same, but making sure that, we are crossing our T's, we're dotting our I's, we're providing robust data to support what we're recommending. So there was an environmental impact statement that was really intended to assess the creek corridor and any other habitat. There's no fish habitat that was found within the watercourse as part of the field studies. There was habitat for certain identified species at risk. There's ability for compensation for that habitat. The noise impact study talks about the potential impacts of existing road noise on the future uses here and provides mitigation measures. Geotechnical investigation is meant to make sure that the property, mainly it was this area, is known for potential karst deposits or limestone, which can dissolve with a lot of water. None of that was found on the site. The transportation impact study takes a look at the existing transportation infrastructure, what the capacity of that is, and puts in place recommendations to improve that to make sure that we can accommodate the proposed development. Environmental site assessment, ensuring that there's no contamination on the site that might be a risk to future residents. Hydrogeological assessment assesses any potential impact on existing private wells in the area. And then the planning rationale, which this is frankly just a really condensed nutshell of that report that I prepared. And then this is mainly for the benefit of anyone who's online or anyone who is in the gallery about where we are in the process. So there was a pre-consultation with town staff. We've submitted all of the studies that you've seen before, as well as the plan of subdivision. And we're currently still in the process of technical review, receiving comments from those reviews, adjusting plans for re-review, and receiving public feedback as well through this. The next step would be for this to come to council for their decision on each one of those three applications. And then, so that would result in a decision regarding the official plan, the zoning. For the subdivision plan itself, which is the division of all the lots, all of the streets, that would receive draft plan approval, which has a number of conditions that are attached to it. It was spoken a bit related to the previous application. So this would be conditions to make sure that there is detailed design and approval of the engineering for the site, design of the park, that the stormwater ponds and the parkland's going to be conveyed to the city, to the town. And once all those conditions are satisfied and the town is satisfied that with all of those additional plans and reports that need to be completed, then the subdivision can be registered, and that's where the streets are legally created, the lots are legally created. And generally speaking, construction can't proceed, and certainly sales can't proceed until the subdivision's registered. That's the extent that I have to speak, but I'm happy to take council's questions as well as those of the public too.
Yeah, great. Thank you, sir. Just hang tight. We'll start with council. Does anyone on council have any questions? Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, thanks for coming tonight. I have questions. You mentioned a window street, and I think I see where that's going to be on block 161. But I have a question about lots 108 to 123 that front onto Bridge Street itself. Is there going to be a driveway from each of those onto Bridge Street? Or will there be a similar where you come into Cherrywood and then you would turn right and there would be a street there that you would have access to the driveways?
Through you, that's a good question. I apologize. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. Are you speaking to the lots to the?
The lots that back onto the stormwater and the park.
Thank you. Thank you. So those would each be, they would match what is already on the other side of Bridge Street. So they would be detached homes, each with their individual driveways that connect to Bridge Street.
Wow. Okay. Don't plan on driving through there between 7 and 9. I think it would be quite busy. Like, is that going to be, I'm sure it was taken into consideration on the traffic study, but when I looked at all of those and I'm picturing all these people backing out and pulling into their driveway with other traffic trying to get through, and yeah, this goes to what Councillor Pinnell was saying earlier, but okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Pinnell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Sorry, Eric, I didn't get your last name, sorry.
Bays.
Thank you for that. Just a couple questions. One is about the live work units. You mentioned something about being like downtown Napanee and stuff but my question is, would there be a restriction on how much use on that floor could be used for a business, if you will? Like you mentioned, a barber shop, that sort of stuff, or could they use the whole square footage for a shop?
Through your worship. So there's a couple different ways it could be set up. What the current concept would be is that the site is a condo, and there are 10 townhouse or live work units on it, and they all jointly pay to maintain the parking at the back and other different features. So the ground floor of each one of those, there's a couple different ways they could be designed. The concept is right now, this would also have to go through a site plan process where more detail is described. There would be room at the back for 2 vehicles to park in a garage, and then the retail area, or the work part of the live work unit would be at the front. The R5 zone proposes a gross floor area cap or a maximum size for that. I would say to council that I believe the owner is certainly willing to discuss what that number is and whether that needs to be adjusted. It would be on each individual basis. So we wouldn't see a situation where, a business that starts in one ends up expanding to the next and the next or something like that. The key is to keep these quite small, but still allow commercial use that invites the public to visit it, which is a little bit different than say a work from home or a home industry case, if that answers your question.
Yeah, what I got from that is that there's work to be done and that could be brought up later. Okay, thank you. And just if I may.
Yeah, go ahead,
through.
Councillor Pinnell.
You mentioned about there's a species at risk and that compensation could be given for that. Could you expand a little bit more on that, of what the species is and about the compensation?
Yeah, so there were my recollection from the report, I apologize, I have it right here, but I don't want to bore anyone with my cross-referencing of it. I can get more details to you on that. My recollection was that it is bobolink, meadowlark, and I believe barn owl was one of the other ones. Yeah. So none of them are identified as endangered species. They're species at risk involve species that there's an ongoing list. Species are added and removed to it by the Ministry of Environment regularly. So in a circumstance like this, they say we've seen habitat. So habitat for bobbling, for example, is fallow fields. So the recommendation often in this case is that this type of habitat can be removed if compensation is provided in another location.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad that you clarified that. I have seen that done in the past, and I would rather see space than compensation as in used in dollar value, that sort of thing. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Purnell. Is there any other questions before we, I know there was a gentleman at the back that may have had a question about stormwater. I don't know if he got that answer or not, but we're going to give him an opportunity to ask it. So if there's nothing else from council, sir, did you want to come up and ask that question, or are you good? Yeah, and he'll be able to provide that information to you, sir, and that way, and I appreciate the thought for the time this evening. Obviously, our public meeting has gone on a little longer, and then but that's why we're here. So, is there anything else? Anyone else that have a comment or a question? Okay, I'll go with this gentleman first, and then I'll go with you, ma'am. Come on up, sir. And as you've seen, we need to get you to provide your name and hold the button that says talk so that the folks at home can hear.
Thank you, Your Worship. Wanted to come back and just comment on what Councillor Purnell had said, a concern in the neighborhood about the traffic volumes going through this intersection, both now and in the future. We don't see a roundabout here or actual attention to what the detail is going to be, but certainly the community would be very interested in seeing how that traffic is going to be managed. My next comment is around the frontage on Bridge Street, which Councillor Hicks had mentioned, 108 to 123. It looks like the size of the lots appear to be semis. Are they? But I just heard that they would be detached. Could we get clarification on that?
Yeah, I think that's a fairly easy one we can clarify. Go ahead, Michael.
Your Worship, those lots, lots 108 to 123 would be single attached.
Okay, that was my concern about the optics of departing from the single detached all the way along Bridge Street to now have semis or something else there. And then also the live work block of units there at the corner of Bridge Street. Will they be facing inwards or outwards? And my question there, I saw a picture where it was kind of an internal circle where the frontage of those live work units were facing inside towards a parking lot, or will they be facing out towards Bridge Street and Cherrywood?
We'll see if Michael or our planner can provide that information for you. I think they probably can. So go ahead, sir, when you're ready.
I'll be presumptuous and bring the chair in just because I don't want to get lazy with my answer because my knees start getting tired. So the concept that we put forward, I apologize, I didn't describe it in that much detail, is just that. It's a concept. It's one way it could be laid out. The zoning is tailored based on that. What that concept shows is that the buildings would front up against the street. They'd be set back 2 to 5 meters from the street, but they would be set up against the street, and the entrances to the individual live work units would be from the street side. So they would be facing towards the extension of Cherrywood and facing towards Bridge Street. But to that point, any development on that site of that form would have to go through another process as site plan control, where there's more detailed design that's done on that specific site.
Okay, thank you. And my concern was if they faced inwards and the back of the building faced outwards, you know, coming from the GTA, I've seen a lot of those units and they do become rentals. And those who occupy those rentals are less inclined to maintain their property as a permanent land or property owner does. So my concern is if it was just the backyard was facing the street, what would that end up looking like? But you're saying that it's going to be the front that faces the street.
Through you, yes, that's the intent of the design at this point. So.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep, great, sir, and thanks for coming out this evening. And we'll go with this lady next. And I just need to get your name, sir, from Stantec. We omitted getting your name, sir.
Oh, that's Eric Bays.
And I'm sorry, Ken Ryder, 418 Bridge Street West.
Thank you, sir. You're making my job easy tonight, so. Come on up, ma'am. And once again, if we could just get your name and before you get started, and the button is on the right-hand side, you have to push it and hold it down to talk.
My name is Nikki Fleury. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I understand that the plan to the west of Cherrywood is just a concept, but as a member that lives on the other side of the road, it is quite concerning. You know, we bought our property 10 years ago, and at that time we were told that it was agricultural and eventually it would be, you know, possibly rezoned, but with low density, similar to what we have now on the other side of us, similar to what you have currently planned for east of Cherrywood. My concern is that when I look on your plans and I see how many units are in a very small area, they're not, you know, they're listed as 5-unit and 6-unit plus the mixed commercial. And the window street that's being proposed, it's literally in my front yard. And the property value that we hold, our family, you know, is just, it's not anything that any of our neighbors were ever anticipating. And it is very concerning. It's, you know, with a family and the street that's possibly exiting onto our yard, there's 104 units plus the commercial parking that is planned. And if every one of these homes has 2 vehicles, which is pretty standard, that would be 208 vehicles leaving onto our driveway every day, plus the parking for the commercial. I can't even imagine how that's going to impact our family, like just like for the neighborhood. It just doesn't seem like it fits into the plan that, you know, is for our community. I know there's no answers that can be given at this moment, but I just wanted to relay my concerns as somebody that's been living there for a decade and, you know, an active community member. It's just kind of mind blowing that this is the plan for our view out the window. Yeah.
No, thanks, ma'am. And that's why we're here. We're here to listen to comments like that. So thank you very much. So is there, come on up, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And again, Darren McFarland, 450. I'm actually Nikki's neighbor. So again, and I just want to acknowledge, I know Mr. Nobes is going to remind us that by policy, all of this is possible. He also said in his lead up to this particular project proposal that it was designed and the steps were being taken to respect people that bought before. And when I do take a look at the development to the west of Cherrywood, it does anything but that. As Nikki said, what we're going to be looking at is essentially the backs of an apartment building where currently it is agricultural. We knew it would be developed, and that is part of a continuous improvement cycle in a town like ours. That's actually something to be celebrated. There is a way to make this development something that I think we can all celebrate and be part of and be proud of, yet still respect the culture of what is Bridge Street West, which is right now a residential area where children can go out for walks, ride their bikes. Yes, Bridge Street is busy. It's going to get busier. But again, it's a place where people go for walks because they value the surroundings. They take a look. The value of the properties are there. People take pride in them. And I think what we're all concerned about is that as we build these, some of these multi-units, high-rise, if you will, that's not something to look out and gaze upon necessarily. And I think there's an opportunity if we take a look at how to rethink, revision that west development, it could honor all intents and interests, bring the investment into our town that we know we need and we want and we value, but also respect the people, as was already stated tonight, respect the people that bought before. As Nikki commented, in terms of keeping some of that density under control as far as how it accesses Bridge Street West, but also, full disclosure, we're getting older. It is becoming a little bit of a retirement community. And again, something to be proud of, a place though where people should be able to go out, feel safe and enjoy the walk, as opposed to dread having to leave their house because it's so dense. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to speak.
No, great. Thank you, sir. And thanks for your comments. Is there any other comments this evening that with respect to our public meeting? If not, we'll look for a motion to adjourn the public meeting. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Norrie. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Thanks, folks. It's been a very productive evening. We're going to take about a 10-minute break. It's that time of the evening where we take a break, and that allows some folks to leave the council chamber. So thanks, and we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you, folks, for your indulgence. Moving on through our agenda. Next up on our agenda is deputations, scheduled deputations, new items, which I don't believe we have any. Deputations items on the agenda. I don't believe we have any, and nor do we have any correspondence items on the agenda. We don't have any unfinished business, so that'll get us right into the administrative consent agenda. Let's start off with the regular session of council minutes for February 11th. Is there anything in those minutes that anyone would like to bring to our attention or make note of? Seeing none. Committee minutes, Recreation Advisory Committee. Is there anything in that the Recreation Advisory Committee minutes that anyone would like to talk about? And I'll give Deputy Mayor Calver, I know he's the chair of that committee, if he would like to comment on anything as well.
No, the report pretty well speaks for itself there. We're just going through our mandate letter, and there's a couple of things we got to make some changes at our next meeting, but that's pretty much it for that.
Great, thanks, Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to correspondence for information items dated February 25th, 2025. I think Councillor Hicks, you wanted to pull something out and speak to it?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Your Worship. The letter from Fort Erie regarding urgent health care. So we'll do that at the end, I'm assuming, or shall I do it now?
I think
now?
I think we could do it right now. I think that would make it easier for me anyways.
Okay.
If we do it right
Yep.
now, we speak to it, and then we'll look for a motion to note, receive, and support. Is that what you're suggesting, Councillor Hicks?
Yes, it is. That council note, receive, and support the resolution from the town of Fort Erie regarding provincial election healthcare advocacy, and further that the council of the town of Greater Napanee requests that the province of Ontario put a moratorium on the closure of urgent care centers and the implicit removal of primary care health services from all small and rural communities in Ontario until Dr. Philpott's mandate is complete to ensure that all Ontarians are attached to a primary care physician. And further that council direct that a support letter be forwarded to the town of Fort Erie, Rick Brise, MPP, and the Rural Ontario Municipal Association.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks, and you're making that by way of motion. Seconded by Councillor Shank. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any other correspondence that anyone would like to pull and speak to? Seeing none. Moving on to proclamation, the National Epilepsy Awareness Day. Is there anything in that proclamation that anyone would like to make comment or speak to? Seeing none. Council inquiry follow-up, snow plowing operations with respect to that report. Is there any other questions that can come out of that report? Or I think Deputy Mayor Calver, you may have raised it. Did you want to speak to it first?
Yeah, no, I read the report there that come through, and I just had some concerns that with the way things were being done this year, and I guess everything's being done the way it should be. So
Great, thanks, Deputy Mayor Calvert. If there's nothing further, moving on to the Executive Services 2025 staff complement, and I know we've had an opportunity to see that. Is there any questions or comments with respect to that? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I just wanted to say that when I requested this to come back to council, it's exactly what I expected. It's a great report. Thank you very much. It's right to the point. It's nice and clean, and I thank everybody that had their hands on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. And I'm sure that Holly had the lion's share to deal with that. So thank you, Holly. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. One quick question, Holly. This includes the as of yet posted and unfilled positions. I believe there's bylaw, procurement / grants, and planning. So those 3 positions have not yet been filled, but they're accounted for in the report. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor Hicks. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to the 2024 Annual Statement of Council Remuneration and Expenses. Is there anything in that report that anyone would like to make note of or comment on? Seeing none. Activity report, Parks, Recreation, and Culture, February 2025. Is there anything in the Parks, Recreation, and Culture report that anyone would like to make note of or speak to or ask any questions? And I know Mr. Brown is currently here. So if anyone has any questions, I'm sure that Chris can probably answer them. Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Brown. I think your work is done for the evening. So unless you want to speak to it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to the report. We had some exciting news come in since I got the report finished. So softball Napanee was awarded the U17 Boys National Championships to be hosted in Napanee here at the fairgrounds. The tournament dates will be August 6th to 10th. So it'll be a week-long national tournament here in Napanee, and we're excited to host that.
Absolutely wonderful news, Chris. Thank you very much. It's always good to showcase our municipality to the country. So thank you very much for that. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to activity report, executive services, February 2025. Mr. Grant, did you want to speak to that before we ask if there's any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So not too much to add to what's in the report already, just ongoing training for staff. We are in the midst of recruiting students, and I did want to point out that we did have scheduled training for advisory committee members that was to happen this week. Unfortunately, our facilitator fell ill, so we will be rescheduling that, and I'm grateful for the patience of advisory committee members.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Is there any questions or comments for Mr. Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to request, even though I am not sitting currently on a committee, I would like to be included in the training, please. Okay, thank you.
I think we can do that. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. If there's nothing else, the activity report, growth infrastructure services, February 2025. Is there any comments or questions on that? And Michael, did you want to speak to some highlights? I know that there's always good stuff in that report. So.
Thank you through you, Your Worship. I did just want to highlight a few items, excuse me, in the report. Nothing further to add beyond what's written in the report, but did just want to highlight a couple items for council and the public's awareness. So the Lear study with the county, we had our initial project kickoff meeting. The county planning staff will be reaching out to agricultural sector groups and business sector groups to solicit members for a steering committee. So when names are put forward, county council will review those and make decisions on who will sit in on that steering committee. That would be separate from the staff committee from a technical perspective that municipal staff will be sitting on. So we'll be hearing feedback from this external committee throughout the project. So that'll be going forward to county council, and there will be opportunities from JL Richards to present to both county and lower tier municipal councils throughout the course of the project to keep council members in the loop. Did just want to highlight that we have the tender closing for the wastewater treatment plant project on March the 20th of this year. So when that is closed, staff will come back to council very shortly thereafter, providing information on the outcome and recommendations on selecting a general contractor and subtrades for that project. And additionally, our public works crews are continuing to work on roadside brushing when time permits through snow removal operations. And we're routinely doing patching work as we're able to fit it in between snow events there.
Great, thanks, Michael. And just with respect to the layer stuff, I think we're going to have a conversation tomorrow night at county. So with respect to the committee members. So is there any questions or comments for Michael with respect? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
My only concern would be is that Waste Management, they had another breakdown. And it seems like every week or every other week they can't complete their job, and living in a rural area and you leave garbage on the side of the road. And then of course on a warm night like this, you're going to have every critter in the countryside is going to have all that garbage strewn from one end to the other. So what is Waste Management going to do with it rather than having another email, having another excuse that something broke down and sorry, we can't do it, and we'll pick it up tomorrow. So are they going to pick up all the garbage that's strewn from one end to the other? And it's just that I can understand accidents happen once in a while, things break down. I totally understand that. But how many breakdowns have they had since January? It's just darn near almost every other week.
Yep, go ahead, Mike.
Through your worship, I do know that staff have a scheduled meeting upcoming with Waste Management to discuss this matter at hand. I can't crystal ball what Waste Management will commit to, but we will certainly bring up that concern directly as it relates to breakdowns, especially during these warmer times when the animals are coming out and poking around. So we will make them aware of the concern.
Thanks, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Mike. Is there anything else? Moving on to the activity report, financial and IT services. Is there anything in that report that anyone would like to make note of? And I know Ellen, did you want to highlight anything in that report?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have much to add to this month's activity report, just highlighting that property tax bills, the first installment of the interim bill is due on Friday, February 28th.
Great, thanks, Ellen. It is that time of year, isn't it? So if there's nothing with respect to Ellen's report, we'll move on to the Access E11 report, December 2024. Is there anything in that report that anyone would like to question or make comment of? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that council consent to the approval of the following routine items. The minutes of the regular session of council dated February 11, 2025 be adopted as presented, that the draft Recreation Advisory Committee minutes of February 5th, 2025 be received for information, that correspondence for information items dated February 2025 be received, less the item that Councillor Hicks had removed, that council receive for information and endorse the proclamation for National Epilepsy Awareness Day, that council receive for information the council inquiry follow-up snow plowing operations report, that council receive for information the executive services 2025 staff complement report, that council receive for information the financial and IT services 2024 annual statement of council remuneration and expenses report, that the activity reports of Parks, Recreation and Culture, Growth and Infrastructure, Executive Services and Financial and IT Services for the month of February 2025 and the Access E11 report for December of 2024, items 8.9 through 8.13 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? The motion's carried. Next on our agenda, items for discussion. First up is fire protection services and service standards. And I think, Chief, you're going to come up and speak to that. So whenever you get settled in, the floor will be yours. I guess Mr. Grant's going to do a preamble for you, Chief. So go ahead, Mr. Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council. So you'll recall from the mandate letter that my mandate letter and senior leadership's mandate letters that service standards were incorporated into that body of work. This represents the first of many service standards or service levels that will come forward. And so just to give you an overview of what to expect. So this is the first. For the larger services, it is our intention to bring them forward in phases. So for example, for the Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture, he has multiple lines of business. So we wanted to stage them out to be able to answer your questions, have any conversations about it. Staff will be available both in council and between council meetings for any council questions that you might have. When you see the service standards laid out, we've aimed to show you with the names of the services what you're required to provide, and that will be listed as legislated, what you're not required to provide. And so therefore we've opted to follow that, adopt that service. When you take a look at service levels, that's how the service is delivered. That is within council's purview and authority to decide. And the service standard is the level that we're aiming to provide that service at. Each member of senior leadership will bring forward service standards as they are today. We will, of course, make recommendations where we feel that we need to. And council can at any time through resolution opt to bring forward a service level change to your colleagues. And I think this represents a level of authority and influence that is council's privilege to make. So for this evening, the fire service, it's your fire service, and deciding what the fire service does and how it conducts its business, you have a significant amount of influence there. I would say in service levels where you see an asterisk next to the service level, you don't have much authority there. That would be legislated. And so the way staff will view this is a legislative requirement is something that council doesn't have a choice in. We have to do it. An essential service level is something that council will set, and staff will take that as gospel. And that is the level that we are aiming to maintain. And discretionary, whether that would be something that would be just that at staff's discretion based on operational capacity. And that would be either because the service itself doesn't lend itself to necessarily a hard service standard, or we accept that we've committed our resources to services that you've deemed important. And those services will need to be fit in, so to speak, where we can do that. So I would also view service standards across the board. We're creating a baseline. And once we have a baseline of service standards in place, staff will know from a service perspective what is expected of us in terms of this is the level of service we're providing and the standard we're looking to maintain. Members of the public will understand this is what we're seeking to achieve. And as we move forward, it's a living document, and council has the opportunity to adjust its services either mid-year or through the budget process. And my expectation of staff is if there is a desire of council to change a service level, it is our obligation to tell you what that would take. And that would be either a resource conversation or an adjustment to a service elsewhere to free up capacity to achieve that. And with that, I will turn things over to the talent who can tell you about the fire service.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Go ahead, Chief Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council, and thank you, Mr. Grant, for that introduction. I will like to kick off by saying it's an honor and privilege to work for this town, and I'm very excited for the future and fire protection services in Greater Napanee, and it's an honor to be part of that and work with SLT and serving councils and acting on behalf of the community as your fire chief. I'm joined here tonight by Deputy Chief James Feeney, and James will assist me where I start to go off track, and he'll straighten me out if things aren't going well. And so we're looking forward to giving council the information they need to direct what types of service they wish to be adopted for the town of Greater Napanee. So we're looking for the service types and the service standard that we should meet as a department, and the training requirements that will help us facilitate those service standards and service types. And with the training requirements, they're so closely connected now to service levels and service types that we really believe that council should be aware that there's a lot of effort in the background in terms of training people to meet those service levels and standards. And just wanted to make sure that that was that was very transparent to council tonight. How does council determine the needs and circumstances of the community, of the fire protection services when the community council must use the community risk assessment that was provided back in April, May of last year to inform decisions about the fire protection services needed in the community. And that will help council to understand the needs of fire protection services and the types of services we provide. So essentially, if there's a risk in the community that's evident and happens quite frequently, that we will have the corresponding service to address those risks, prevent the risks, or mitigate the risks, or transfer the risk to another agency. And the transfer of risk to another agency would be a manufacturing facility that has a fire rescue team on site that can access technical machinery and do services that we wouldn't normally be trained to do. And at that point, we would be available to help them once things are corrected with the machinery, and hopefully get the person out of that machinery, and then provide first aid care until the ambulance arrives. I'll give a bit of a presentation here on this, and hopefully that will provide more clarification for you. Yeah, sure. Just skip through CEO's grant slides because they have been shared before with council, and the introduction really covered a lot of that. So fire service levels assist the fire department by ensuring that we're all focused and reaching towards the same goals. It's also important to understand what the training requirements are and having the right resources, staffing, equipment to carry out those training requirements. and also giving the firefighters clarity in their role and allowing them to stay in their lane, which I've heard since my time here, and provide the services they need to provide in their positions they are serving in. And all of that helps in giving that empowerment to the firefighters to use their skills in the most professional way that they always use them in. Again, this was from CAO grant slide. So some of the sub-services we have, James, you want to go and speak to that for me? Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Through you, your worship, some of the services we have obviously are fire suppression, and then we also have technical rescue, which is our hazardous material responses. And we're going to be training to the awareness and operation level, not the tech level. Ice water rescue, which is on the ice in the water, which we currently do. Motor vehicle entrapments, obviously that's self-explanatory, motor vehicle accidents and crashes. Equipment entrapments. And rope rescue. So we do rope rescue, low angle and high angle rope rescue. So we want to continue with that. So.
We also provide fire suppression services, as you can see on the screen, structure fires, non-structure fires, and wildland urban interface fires with a rural and urban interface. And also within those specialties, there's with an interior fire attack, there are search and rescue, and there's also different technical skills with respect to accessing multi-unit dwellings such as high rises. And we have those coming up in more of a concrete way in Greater Napanee. So we'll be available with specialized training to enter high rises safely and control the smoke and get people out of those buildings and extinguish the fire, obviously. We do fire prevention, we do mandatory inspections, we do inspections upon complaint, we'll do real estate transfers, we'll do immediate threats to life. We're down ensuring that the community is safe in our public spaces and serving as that. We also do public education and fire safety education. That includes our visits to the schools, ensuring that we have a smoke and CO alarm program. That is a legislative requirement when providing fire protection services through a fire department, and ensuring that people are aware of the need to have a functioning smoke alarm, smoke detector, and CO detector on each floor of their dwelling, and especially outside of the sleeping areas. James spoke about that. So for the Greater Napanee Fire Department, we are a department that is established as a composite department. We have services that meet the needs and circumstances of the community based on the community risk assessment. Our mandated services are fire suppression, fire prevention, and public education, fire safety education. The other services that go along with that are really at council's purview to say, we need these or we don't need these, and use the community risk assessment to kind of inform yourselves on that. And that was a thoughtful process carried out by Lumex and then summarized by myself when I attended here in April, May last year. We do rescue and emergency services. We'll do entrapments from cars. We'll do technical rope rescue. We'll do other technical rescues. One of the things that aren't highlighted here, as I said in my introduction, are things like structural collapse. While we're not trained in that, we'll certainly be at the scene of, say, a vehicle driving through a home to actually affect the auto extrication or the extrication of that person. But the technical aspects around shoring up that building and making sure that it's safe for people to go in and repair it, we don't do. So we would have to call in specialized services to do that. We would do our best to get the person out of that building. In those situations, we should establish agreements in advance with communities next to us or areas that have that kind of service. So that would be a recommendation moving out of this, that we look at that kind of thing for the town of Greater Napanee should the need arise. Obviously, the smoke and CO and communications provided by the City of Kingston Regional Communications Center, and they look after all the fire services in Kingston, Frontenac, Lennox, and Addington under contract. Training of persons involved by providing fire protection services really speaks to the mandatory certification and standards that we must meet to ensure the firefighters are trained and skilled in the job they do. And that's both legislatively required under Regulation 343-22 of the Fire Protection and Prevention Act, and also as a requirement of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, as any institution, industry, or commercial entity would have to ensure their workers are trained and understand the risks. Administratively, we look after we're responsible to the council of the municipality, obviously, for the delivery of fire protection services, and it's a hand in glove relationship in terms of the services that you direct that fire protection in the fire department in the town provides, and then our responsibility to recommend the way we provide those services, and council would adopt that as the standard. And that's really what's before you tonight. Deputy Chief is my trusted colleague and would fill in a situation where the fire chief isn't involved, might be of an absence of any kind of nature, and we would coordinate the support of the chief's office through our own internal planning to make sure there's always somebody available. Obviously, we're going to be at the scene of an emergency situation and support command and assist or take command as needed, and ensure that the resources are coordinated and the community partners that need to be involved at the scene are involved, and that we're getting the support we need to effectively address the emergency. Talked about fire suppression. Again, the types of fire protection we provide is in this slide. And really the issue around equipment and rural equipment is something that we are not specifically trained to do. However, we go to many entrapments in farm machinery and many industrial accidents where there's somebody trapped in a machine. And we will certainly work with, do our level best to make sure that the team at the industry that's responsible for ensuring safety is on site and they have all the resources they needed. And if they need some further support from us, we're happy to provide that, but really they are in command of that incident. And as in a farm situation, you know, if it's straightforward, like a motor vehicle collision, if that is the case, then we will stabilize the scene, the patient, and the vehicle or the farm implement as best we can. And we've been able to manage that. What I'm recommending for those situations that I just referred to is the level of awareness training for our staff so that we don't go too far into the situation, and we can facilitate that within the training. You'll see in the training standards, I don't really speak about that as one of the highlighted areas in the appendix 3 of the report. So therefore, that means I believe we just need some awareness on that right now to see to what the risks are. And also when we identify those areas, work with our community partners in industry and the rural community to make sure they have the available resources for farm rescue, self-rescue, and we're communicating back and forth with the industry and our rural partners on those requirements for sure. Technical rescue really relates to water and ice rescue, our hazardous materials response operations training, rope rescue. We had a situation last summer where we had to get a person using rope rescue techniques from a precarious position along the community pathway. And we were able to effectively do that with the skills and knowledge they provided. So we're happy to be part of that and a successful rescue with that person. The tiered response agreement, mutual aid and automatic aid agreements are really all part of an agreement between the parties. So with the recent medical tiered response report that council received, we would append those to the new establishing and regulating bylaw as an attachment, along with automatic aid agreements, the mutual aid agreement, the training standards, the service levels, and we'll build that in the next report for when we refresh the bylaw. Fire prevention, we have really one half of a resource doing fire prevention and one half of a resource doing fire education. And that's really one person. And then that person's also expected to be on the trucks and responding to the fire alarms when they come in to the greatest extent practical. If that person doesn't make that opportunity to make the apparatus of the emergency scene, we have policy in place to ensure that the volunteer firefighter can come in, and we'll wait for that person so we have the right amount of staffing on the vehicle. It's not ideal, but it certainly it ensures that we have the four people on the truck and we're getting out of there. So there is a bit of a delay, but it's not unreasonable considering the area of Greater Napanese urban area, urban fabric. James, I think fire safety education.
Yeah, so through your worship, our next one's fire safety education. So we're in the community as much as we can. We also tap into our volunteer force, our POCs, to assist with that. Again, that's half of what the fire prevention officer is doing. So we try to resource that out to the other firefighters as much as we can. Our goal is to also look at the CRA and see where our risks are, and through our simplified risk assessment to see where we need to target, such as maybe young youths, maybe the elderly. We look at our fire risks to see where they are, such as cooking fires. So we try to gear our stuff towards that stuff. So it's there's always a revolving, moving target we have.
Another issue in fire safety education is respecting our unhoused population in our public areas. And we have been working with bylaw and the firefighters to provide information and materials to our people that are unhoused in our community and making sure they're as safe as they can be. We've noticed last year, and we anticipate it happening again, that we'll be responding to fires in public spaces. We've worked with the clerk's office and all of the senior leadership team to address this in a way that's incrementally helpful. And we'll continue to keep our eye on and monitor that. And that is a service change that really wasn't part of our regular bag of tricks, lack of a better term. And it's increasing demand on the services.
Through your worship, our next one is training legislated, and that's our backbone to be able to do all these services. So provide knowledge of the service level, training and skills and practical skills through the OFM and through the AS&E departments for the Fire Marshal's Office to assist with that. Ensuring we maintain our training certification standards, always keeping the eye on the target, making sure our weekly trainings are in line with what our levels of service are. Coordinate the recruit class, which is a big thing. That's always a big venture we have with that to try to maintain our POC levels, and that's our goal, to continue with that and we increase those levels to keep that staffing up. That's certainly something that we want to keep our eye on and keep moving towards. And establishing new training and modern fire fighting techniques. So it's quite a daunting task, but certainly we're well positioned for that.
And finally, the real bright stars in all of this in our service provision is our composite fire department. Our firefighters, full-time and volunteer, work tirelessly to ensure the mandate is achieved and ensure the fire protection services are done in the most efficient way. We are working with them, since I've started in here last April, and really I've learned that their top values are teamwork, accountability, and respect. And I believe accountability is equally as important to them. So we have a great department. They're passionate, they're empowered, and the full-time and volunteers are working together in a way that's very positive and exciting for the future. We couldn't do it without our volunteer firefighters. They really do fill a need both in all three lines of defense: our fire suppression, our training and education, and our fire prevention. They help out and they contribute amazing with that. And our full-time people keep things going and keep the equipment and resources ready, always to be at the ready when the fire call is needed. So with that, I'm certainly happy to answer any specific questions about anything in the report. I hope I've covered it appropriately.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Deputy Chief, for the exhaustive report. We really appreciate it. Is there any questions or comments for the Chief or Deputy Chief? Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to start off by saying thank you, Chief, for accepting the position of the Fire Chief for Greater Napanee. I think the town of Napanee is in great hands with the team we have here, with both the Chief and the Deputy Chief Feeney as well. And I think we're extremely lucky to have a man of such impeccable character as our Fire Chief. And I just want to thank him for accepting the position, and I look forward to working with him in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Very well said. Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Chief, Deputy Chief. Good report. I just wanted to touch on, I think it was Appendix 3 with the yellow highlighting. Some things are highlighted, some are not. Can you just clarify? I think I know what it is, but I'm not going to say. I want you to explain it. Thank you.
Each service presented in the slides, each service type has a corresponding training. I attempted to affiliate that with each service type. So if it's fire suppression, there's a correlating standard to that. Where there isn't a service type that we currently provide, then I left it blank. However, with those service types, I do recommend that I ensure that the department is trained at least to another awareness level, which is something we can fold into our current training. It's not saying we provide that service, but having that general awareness, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear issues, that we'd be more aware of that.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Chief, Deputy Chief, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us about this tonight. Chief, with just a follow-up of what you just said, if it's not highlighted, then we're not having that service. But in the far right column, it says compliance by July 2026 and, excuse me, 2028. So is this something that we need to do then?
Through your worship, if it's not a service that council's approved, we are not required to do it, as long as we're not providing that service as a fire department. If so, we do that at, I believe it's my jeopardy in terms of what I instruct the staff to do. And if they're not trained in it, I shouldn't be instructing them to do it. And if it's not approved by council, they shouldn't be doing it either. And so with those situations, trench rescue, structural collapse, confined space, entry, those types of services, we should have an awareness program. Hazardous materials are included in our services because we're at a lot of car accidents. They have training in hazardous materials operations. They aren't technicians level. They can't like pack the substance and remove it from the site, but they certainly have enough to contain that incident and keep people away and stop the flow of, say, diesel leaking into a water course or any type of other chemical, just to take a defensive approach to that. So if it's not a service we provide, I didn't highlight the training requirements because we're not required to meet those.
Okay, thank you. So if it's not highlighted and we don't provide the service, then we don't have to worry about the compliance date. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Great, thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
This is a technical one. I don't care who answers it, but so we always have the FPPA that we have to follow. So why can we not? Why do we need an FPA? Yeah, the NFPA. But why do we have to have? Why can't we use it at the discretion of your experience? Why do you have to follow all these and take? I'm not going to say anything else. I just, I just want to know, one's an act and one is, why do we have to do the NFPA thing?
So under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act, Ontario Regulation 343/22 refers to the NFPA standard for training and certification. And that's why in other NFPA standards, certainly we can use those as a target and strive to achieve those. In certain situations, we would have to identify and bring the standard back as something for council to decide on, such as staffing levels. Like if the standard had something that we couldn't provide, because of our certain staffing, then we would have to come back to council and explain that. But it really isn't a standard that you have to meet an NFPA in other services, but it's certainly the best practice and the benchmark to try to achieve. And but with training, it's an Ontario regulation. That's why it refers to the NFPA.
I might as well ask all these questions. So bunker gear, 10 years, helmet, 10 years still. But if it passes, if it passes the test, you know, I mean, that it's cleared to still be in use, why can we not push it until the point of, because, you know, there's different varieties of usages on different equipment. So that's the reason why when I hear the NFPA, I'm going, well, yeah, just because it says 10 years, well, I might have 5,000 kilometers on my car, but the next guy who's got 10 years might have 500,000. So why not keep the 5,000 one kicking around until it has the 500,000?
Through your worship. So we talked about the NFPA standards, and I know we're all well versed in that. Some are. So we also have the firefighter guidelines for health and safety. And specifically when we talk about bunker gear, they highly recommend through that committee, which is part of IAFF, OPFFA, also the Volunteer Firefighters Association. They sit on that board with the UFM and the Ministry of Health, and they say that the best practice is you should be changing that out at the recommended time. So that's a health and safety issue, and it's certainly something that we're looking at. We're also looking at providing PFAS-free gear, and that gear also has a chemical. All gear mostly has this chemical called PFAS in it. Without getting into it, the new gear doesn't. So we're also looking at changing it out to ensure that, because that's a cancer-causing flag. So we're looking at next year start changing out our gear with that stuff. But it's certainly under the firefighter guidelines for changing gear out every 10 years, and they reference the NFPA standard as well as the reference the Ontario Health and Safety Act.
Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
Sorry, Mayor. It's just that the guys were getting off way too easy here, so I had to throw one out there.
I just, through your worship, I'd like to add that the manufacturers won't certify the gear after 10 years either, so they get you coming and going that way.
Yeah, it's the way of life these days, I think, Chief. Is there any other questions or comments for the Chief or the Deputy Chief with respect to the report or the presentation they did this evening? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that Council receive the report SR 788-2025 for information, and Council directs that the service types, service standards, and training requirements be adopted, and that service types, standards, and training requirements form part of the fire protection service delivered by the Greater Napanee Fire Department. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. Is there any other further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Deputy Chief. It's always a pleasure to listen to the fire stuff, so thank you. Next up, we have Emergency Services Fire Truck Pull in support of the Napanee Connect community event. And Mr. Grant, are you going to speak to that, or is Madam Clerk?
I'm happy to speak to that and turn it over to Madam Clerk. So one of the things that staff is working on is a community events policy and a corporate events policy. In lieu of that policy, when we get requests for use of staff equipment, town equipment or facilities and the like, until that process is in place, it is either through delegation or a staff report that we bring forward a request for use of community equipment. So we have had a request to use a fire truck for a truck pull for a community event. And so, as I mentioned, in the absence of a policy, we brought that forward for council's consideration and endorsement, basically to see if you're okay with it. And I'm happy to have the clerk add anything I may have missed.
Through your worship, the only other thing I would add is that the applicants in this case did intend to come speak to you tonight. Unfortunately, there was a last-minute scheduling challenge and they were unable to be here. But they did want to make this request to you. We thought the staff report would be an appropriate way of bringing this forward, just to make sure that we do have council's approval in the absence of a policy. Yeah, if there's any other questions, happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any questions or comments for either? Go ahead, Councilor Brunel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess this would be to directed to the chief. Chief, what truck will be used for this? And also, if the truck is pulled away during the event, will the truck need to return to the station, or will there be enough firefighters at the location that they can leave right from the event?
Through you, your worship. So the truck will have to obviously leave if there's a fire call, and we'll pumper 811 or a front run pumper that would go. Once when the call is done, if they can come back, they will. It'll also depend on what the call is, and there could be an opportunity where the truck might not come back if it's a large fire. So there is that that issue. For that event, we'd obviously canvass the POCs as well to come and help out. So there could be some firefighters left back to help. But as for the truck, it is a front run truck that will go. Hopefully it'll be able to come back, but obviously there's nothing guaranteed depending on the call type and what it is.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Brunel.
Thank you, Deputy. Will the truck be able to leave from the event, or will it need to go back to the station? So I guess my question is, will there be enough firefighters at the event that it can just leave right from there if it is called out?
Yes, through your worship, yes, it will be able to leave immediately if there's a call. The duty crew will be on, and we'll also staff it if we need to with the POCs to ensure there's a proper staffing level so it doesn't have to go back to the hall for staff or wait for staff. It'll be able to go immediately.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Brunel. Is there anything else? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information the Executive Services Fire Truck Pull in support of the Napanee Connect Community Event Report, and further that council approves the attendance of the fire truck with the appropriate staffing contingent upon the submission of a safety plan and proof of liability insurance of $2 million, naming the town of Greater Napanee as an additional insured as deemed acceptable by the fire chief and the treasurer. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Next up is the Aquatics Advisory Committee, and I think Mr. Grant, you're going to speak to that.
Through your worship to members of council, at a previous meeting of council when we discussed advisory committees, it was the will of council to proceed with a version of the pool advisory committee, and the conversation centered around aquatics advisory committee. So in line with that direction, I brought forward this report and proposed mandate letter for an aquatics advisory committee and subsequent terms of reference. In a nutshell, the Aquatics Advisory Committee would assist council with information and advice on one, how to access how to give access to Napanee residents to aquatics related recreational activities using the amenities of other areas. That could take a variety of forms and everything from agreements with other organizations that may have pools to aquatics in the natural environment. The mandate letter itself also outlines research and advice on how other like-sized municipalities may have accessed resources or partnerships that may have put it in a position to acquire its own aquatics facility. And so with that, I brought that forward for council's consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Is there any comments, questions, or concerns from Mr. Grant with respect to his presentation or the report that is in front of us? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that the council receive the report on the Aquatics Advisory Committee mandate, that council officially change the name of the Pool Advisory Committee to the Aquatics Advisory Committee in recognition of a broader mandate, and council endorse and adopt the Aquatics Advisory Committee 2025 mandate letter and terms of reference. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Norrie. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Next up, well, I think you're probably going to speak to it as well, the revised farmers market operating agreement and lease. Go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, in follow-up to our in-depth discussion on proposed operating agreement for the Lennox and Addington Chamber of Commerce to operate a farmers market, the memorandum of understanding, the operating agreement has been amended. So the amendments have removed access to the third floor. They have made available the first floor for meetings, but under the same booking system as any other community group that might wish to access those facilities. And in the report, you'll see that it's made clear that move-in to the lease space, which is also in the agreement, which represents 2.7% of the building, 2 offices located on the first floor. That would occur when the remediation of the first floor, particularly removal of materials, has been completed. And until such time, as highlighted in the report, is the understanding that the Chamber of Commerce would remain in their current accommodations until such time that the space becomes available. Other than that, the remainder of the agreement remains in place. I believe those were the items that were of interest to council, and so they have been amended, and this has been brought forward to you. And should the will of council be to adopt this agreement, next steps would be to sign off on the agreement and then to work with the Chamber of Commerce on any of the logistics, which would provide support and planning and the like. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Is there any questions, comments, or concerns of Mr. Grant with respect to the report or his presentation? Go ahead, Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Grant, I still have concerns about a couple of things, and one of them is the amount of rent being paid. The other concern I have is we haven't actually reached out to the community and see if there's any other organization or group that would want to operate. And we have a Market Square advisory committee, and I believe they're meeting this week or next week. And I'd like to see it go to that committee first and see if there's any recommendations or advice from them prior to us signing an agreement. That's my 2 main concerns there.
Yep, go ahead, Mr. Grant.
So through you, Mr. Mayor. I would say that whom council chooses to run a farmer's market is the privilege of council, and the level of rent that you would wish to charge would be the privilege of council. With respect to the rent, it's based on the recommendation of cost recovery. Effectively the cost of 2.7% of the building. And so that's what that rent is earmarked at. Now, that being said, if there is a different rental arrangement or any rental arrangement changes that council would seek to entertain, that is your privilege, and you can certainly do that. With respect to should council want to go out to a request for proposals or a different format to receive other applications for someone that may want to operate a farmer's market, that is also your privilege. I believe this is in response to an offer from the Chamber of Commerce, so we wanted to bring that forward for your attention. And in our conversation and communication with them, they are looking in conversations somewhere in May to begin the operations of a farmer's market. So I would say in terms of runway, to get an operation like that, secure vendors, do logistics, there would need to be some lead time. I would say going out for a request for proposals, again, is absolutely something that you can do. I would suggest it would likely delay a May start from whoever would want to do that and push it either later into the season or maybe a next year thing. But that being said, it's whatever agreement that's, if any agreement that we land on, should be something that council feels supportive of because it's your building. That's how I would answer those particular questions. So the rent is cost recovery. based on the bills that we had paid for the percentage of the building. And bringing it forward was in the interest of letting council know there has been interest in that particular thing from our providing that service from the Lennox and Addington Chamber of Commerce. My perspective is it's a decent organization to operate a farmer's market. I don't know what else would be interested in doing that. And of course that if you wanted to go out for a call, you could do that. And should that be the direction of council, we would put together a process to undertake that work.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Thanks, Councilor Martin. Is there anything else before we entertain a staff recommendation? Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too echo what Councilor Martin has to say. Just recently we went through a procedural issue and we got that corrected, and yet this came in without us. What I believe is council not doing their due diligence. And I know that we've heard that we don't have people knocking down our doors to run this, and I respect that, but we didn't go out for the call either. One of the reasons why the town of Greater Napanee is not running their own market themselves is that it does cost money, and so far the return on investment is not there. But when I look at these numbers, it's going to continue to cost us money as well with this rent and stuff. $170 a month for two offices, which will include heat, hydro, and cleaning services. We'll split on porta potties for outside, and we'll also take care of their garbage, and we'll look after road closures and assembling and dismantling barriers. So I think that we're heavily invested in this as well, but I just want to make sure that we get this right and that we're looking after the best interests of our residents who are paying this bill.
Thanks, Councilor Pennell. Is there anything else? I guess I'll weigh in briefly is that by entertaining the agreement with the Chamber of Commerce does not restrict any other group to come forward and hold a market of any form, whether it be a farmer's market, any type of market in the market square. It doesn't restrict that. There's 7 days in the week. I think they're talking about maybe doing 1 or 2 days. That leaves a lot of days of the week left for anybody else to approach us and say, listen, I've got something I want to do in the market square. Do you think I could do it on a Tuesday afternoon? Of course, we're going to entertain that. So I think sometimes we lose track of the fact that because we have an organization, and I think a good organization, the Chamber of Commerce is a good organization that knows what their business is, has approached us to run something 1 or 2 days of the week, doesn't necessarily give them carte blanche or a monopoly on the market square. As we know, and I had a conversation with a gentleman not that long ago, there's a gentleman that wants to have a barbecue thing in the market square. He's found a date. He's going to do that. He's not going to do it every weekend, or he's not going to do it once a week or even once a month. But those are the kinds of things that will reap once they find out, folks in this area find out, hey, there's a place we can hold a market. Let's see what's available, and let's see if we can do something down there. And like I say, it may or may not be a farmer's market. It may be any other kind of market. But there's lots of time in the week, days of the week to do that. So I don't think we're restricting ourselves by any stretch of the imagination by entertaining an offer from a group that has the ability to provide a good service in our downtown and our market square area. But that's just my opinion, and I will entertain any other comments. Go ahead, Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Respectfully, I'll just come back with, I agree with you on that we can have anybody else during the week to run something. But it was also included in this agreement that for them to run the market square, that we would provide them 2 permanent offices at the cost that I just said. And I don't think that we'd offer that to anybody else. One of the questions I do have for the CAO is that our mandate letter from the Market Square Advisory Committee is to find non-permit uses and non-permit groups to use that space. Will our mandate letter now need to be changed because there is permanent people that are going to be in this building?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Pinella, I don't think the mandate letter has to change. I would suggest the two areas within the building would likely not be opened up to the more permanent event space. So I don't think that it would be a burden. I would suggest that in occupying that space, would there be interactions between chamber staff and individuals who might be holding that space? That is possible. But I think that if there were spaces in the building that likely wouldn't be event spaces, obviously the third floor is off limits. The basement is not something that is fit for purpose at present. Those two particular office spaces would likely lend themselves to storage or something else, but I don't think they would be, because of the structure of the building, open for a larger event space. If there were areas that we were going to have for this purpose, those would be the areas. So I don't think it has to be revised, but I imagine it would be a matter of discussion in terms of anything we'd want to put in place to make sure that there's no conflict of purpose with anything that's occurring in that space. So if they're having an office space and they might have to use the bathroom and there's someone using that space, we'd want to make sure that there's a clear understanding of how interactions would be managed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Purnell. Councilor Shank.
I think one of the main questions that we all have to ask ourselves is, do you want a farmer's market? Yes or no? You know what I mean? It's a small community. I haven't seen anybody knocking on our doors to run a farmer's market. But at the same token is that Stone Mills has a great farmer's market, been to it. Loyalist, Bath, everyone, even Bath on Sundays have an awesome farmer's market. You know what I mean? So everybody except Napanee. So there's always an out clause. We can always, well, this is not, this isn't, or this is, but I just like to get it up and running and see if they even give them every benefit chance that they have. Exactly what the mayor said. If somebody else wants to run a function, there's different days that they could run a function, but we want to get more visitation downtown, more activity downtown. This is one way of doing it. Now we can bounce this around for the next 6 months and say, we'll put it out for a tender or an RFP and this and that and everything else. But at the end of the day, do you want it or don't you want it? You know what I mean? I would love nothing better to have a farmer's market and give it a chance to see if it'll survive. Maybe in this municipality it won't, but you know what? Let's give them every benefit of the doubt to have it. So, I see a lot of residents in my neck of the woods are going down to Bath, and heck, I've been to Tamworth and all the other different places, and it's great to see some of the local artisans, what they're doing, what they're not doing. You know what I mean? And so let's promote it as best as we can and help them out as best we can. In all the years I've been here, this is one of the first ones that have said, hey, and it's a chamber of commerce, so they're business people. So let's help them out. I'll move staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councilor Shank. We do have a motion on the floor that council received the updated farmers marketing operating agreement with the Langston-Addington Chamber of Commerce. The council endorsed the signing of the operating agreement and direct the chief administrative officer to work with the Langston-Addington Chamber of Commerce to execute the agreement. Moved by Councilor Shank, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there any other comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the conversations that we've had or the motion that's on the floor? Go ahead, Councilor Martin.
I just want to respond to Councilor Shank because, there's nobody in here that doesn't want to have a farmer's market. But a farmer's market is a farmer's market. I mean, we're not going to have 4 or 5 farmer's markets. The only concern I had was we didn't give anybody the opportunity. You can say that nobody knocked down the doors, that's fine, but we didn't ask anybody either. if they wanted to operate a farmer's market here. So that was my main concern. I just want the whole community to have the same opportunity. And nobody's against the Chamber of Commerce either. The Chamber of Commerce does great work. I just wanted to clarify that a bit, but like I said, farmer's market, yes, I want one for sure. But I did have a couple of concerns, and one of them is the fact that we didn't ask anybody if they came to us. So that's good.
Thanks, Councilor Martin. Go ahead, Councilor Shank, then I'll go to Deputy Mayor Cower.
So I totally, you know what I mean? I hear your point. I'm sure my farming is multifaceted with all different things, but I do grow a lot of fruits and vegetables, and you have a lot of, you know, pop up little markets here and there. You know, the one by Canadian Tire here in Napanee and one outside, they went to those people and asked, you know, can we rent that piece of property? You're not going to have, I'll tell you right now, you're not going to have 20 farmers selling their markets out here, but you're going to might have a flea market where somebody's going to be selling some wood or some wool. Another person's going to go ahead and sell what they've done with wood that they've done in Tamworth. You're going to have another one selling maple syrup or whatever. So you're going to be multifaceted. But it was up to the individual if they wanted to market their wares, would go to the appropriate place. All right. So if I needed a location to sell my wares, I would have come to the town. But we have nobody that's producing a market that wants to come to this town to use this location. But if you have somebody spearheading this location, you might entice all these other people that are in here that might want to come one day a week, not 7 days a week at a different location, might come here. So that's the reason why I'm saying, let's them run the course through the business plan that they might have. And they're going to go through ups and downs and their ebbs and what was entitled, what isn't entitled. We don't have the time, the staff, or the resources to do this. So that's the reason why I agree with what you're saying, but I don't want to red tape the poor guys to death either. That's the reason why I'm saying. I understand, Councilor Martin, but that's my thoughts, because I know other locations, and especially in the city of Kingston, you know what I mean, and the downtown market, what they've done also, you know. So there we go.
Thanks, Councilor Shank. I'll go to Deputy Mayor Cower, then I'll go to Councilor Hicks.
Keeping in mind that this isn't the first time we've heard of this, this has come up a couple of times, and has anybody else reached out to us since this first come to light the first time around?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, no.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councilor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Matthew, is there anything, I didn't see anything in the agreement where they would, yes, 2 days a week, and they're going to tell us what 2 days, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, whatever. Are they operating this on a cost recovery? Do we know what they're looking for in the way of profit, or are they doing this to encourage people to come to the downtown core, support the market and existing businesses? I guess I'm asking you, what's their goal? What's their objective? The Chamber of Commerce, what is their objective in running this market?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Hicks. So in the discussions and coming up with this agreement, my understanding is that the motive is twofold. It is to make some operating profit for the chamber and their activities, but a large part of any profit is to be reinvested into marketing of the farmers market to bring people into the downtown area and to showcase local business.
Thank you. That was the answer I expected and was actually hoping for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hicks. Go ahead, Councilor Purnell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. As mentioned before, we could all say that we want a farmer's market and stuff, but there's two parts to this agreement. And I ask council, are you okay with renting out 2 offices for $170 per month, which includes heat and hydro, cleaning services, and all the other wonderful stuff that we have to do with the farmer's market as well? Are you okay with that rent? That's what I'd like to know.
Go ahead, Mr. Grant.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so heat, hydro, yes, cleaning services would not be my expectation that those would be made available, or is it, if it's in there? So my apologies. Internet and phone would not be made available.
Thanks, Mr. Grant. Is there anything else before we call for the vote? Councillor Hicks.
So through you, your worship, so I understand what Councillor Pennell is saying about the rent, and I think Councillor Martin mentioned it as well, but when I walked through the door tonight, the heat was on. And when I walked through the door in July, the air conditioning is on. So this is not new, and you cannot segregate. Like, it's not like there's no heat going into those offices right now. It's running anyway. So you're getting something back on your hydro. The toilets flush 4 times a month here, because we usually end up having 4 meetings here. Or there's committee meetings here. Like, it's not like you're turning things off and on. And I think cost recovery, based on the calculations that Mr. Grant and Mr. Brown did, we're not looking to make a profit off the back of the Chamber of Commerce. And having the offices rented out to them, I think really does show collaboration. It shows the commercial ratepayers, specifically in Greater Napanee, and I know it is the County of Lennox and Addington Chamber of Commerce, but it shows the businesses in Napanee that Napanee is invested in supporting them, even if that is only by doing cost recovery on 2 offices in the town hall. So that's where I'm coming from on that.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything else before we call for the vote? And then we're going to look for a motion to go past 10 o'clock. I'm not sure how we're going to make out of that, but let's get this one dealt with first. If there's nothing further, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, folks. Let's see if the motion to go past 10 o'clock flies. If not, we're going to have to skip the last matter that we have on there, which is street. Well, I don't want to surmise, Madam Clerk, just because we've got bylaws, information, inquiries, notices the motion, and a number of other things. So let's entertain a motion to go past 10 o'clock. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. And we do need a unanimous vote on this. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Thanks, Councillor Shank. Opposed, the motion is carried unanimously, Madam Clerk. So let's move on to the Executive Services Street Name Inventory. Madam Clerk, you're going to speak to that.
So through your worship, this report is before council tonight, seeking your approval to formally add this list of proposed names to our street name inventory. Once approved, this will be shared with all developers who are currently working on subdivisions or may be working on subdivisions in the future to inform how the proposals they submit for names. At the end of the day, council still retains ultimate approval over what names go on what streets now and in the future, and this list can always be added to as time goes on. It's intended to be a living document, and this is not the final version of the only names that can ever exist. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Madam Clerk. Councillor Shank.
Move staff recommendation.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded by Councillor Hicks that council receive for information the Executive Services Street Name Inventory Report, and further that council approve the list of proposed names for inclusion in the street name inventory and direct growth and infrastructure staff to share the street name inventory with the subdivision developers in the accordance with the town's street naming policy. We have a motion that's on the floor. Is there any other further? Go ahead, Councillor Shanks.
So my question is, Jessica, is that, okay, let's say I'm the developer and the town just got me for over $1 million for the infrastructure and everything else. And I've got a granddaughter that I like to call what street, you know what I mean? What her name is and the street. Does the developer still have the right to approach council or saying, hey guys, you know what? I built it, I'm paying for it. I want to have my, own name.
Yeah, I think Mr. Nose can answer that. I think I could even answer that one, Councillor Shank, but I'll let Mike, he'll do it much more eloquently than I can.
Through your worship, yes, they will have the opportunity to propose one name that is not on the list in their subdivision, provided it meets the technical criteria on spelling and length and that sort of thing. But yeah, the list, at least 75% of the names within a subdivision are to come from the list, but one can be not on the list and subject to council approval.
Thanks, Councillor Shank. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Sorry, through your worship. And if I may, one, it does not even need to pertain to any of the criteria as far as representing Napanee qualities, greater Napanee qualities, heritage, things like that. It does still need to comply for emergency services requirements and length and spelling clarity, but not in terms of having any local ties. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Shank. Is there anything further? We do have a motion on the floor. All in favor of the motion is on the floor. Opposed, the motion is carried. Bylaws. First bylaw is number 2025-0017 to amend Advisory Committee Bylaw 2024-0076 to add terms of reference. Look for a motion, put it on the floor. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Ready first, second, and finally passed this 25th day of February 2025. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? The motion is carried. Bylaw number 2025-0018 to regulate the operation of municipal cemeteries and to repeal bylaw 2022-0063. Look for a motion to put it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Norrie. Ready first, second, and finally passed this 25th day of February 2025. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Bylaw number 2025-0019 to amend fees and charges. Bylaw number 2023-0027 to add updated cemetery fees. Look for motion to put it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Martin. Ready first, second, and finally passed this 25th day of February 2025. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Information reports from members. Are there any members of council that would like to update or highlight anything with respect to their committees or county council or anything like that? Seeing none. Inquiries. Are there any inquiries of council that they'd like to task staff with that they can bring back in a staff report at our next meeting or when it's able to be completed? Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
I just have one question on the committees, actually, on the Waste Diversion Committee in particular. When are we going to be asking for new members for the committee?
Madam Clerk can answer that, Councillor Martin.
Through your worship, the application is currently open and I just received the first application as we were sitting here this evening.
Perfect. Thank you. Boy, you can't have any quicker service than that.
Bill, you can't get any quicker than that. No. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Madam Clerk, when would we expect the results from the communication survey back? Or sorry.
Mr. Grant.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have the results. My intention is to bring them to the next meeting. I'm pleased to say that we had 250 respondents, which is about 3 times the number of surrounding municipalities for like surveys.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there any other questions or inquiries? Seeing none, are there any notices of motion? I'm not aware of any, but we'll check and see if there are any. Seeing none. New business. Is there any new business? I don't believe that there is, but we'll ask the question. Announcements. Is there any announcements anyone would like to make or speak to with respect to anything that's going on in the community? Seeing none. CAO's remarks. Mr. Grant, do you have any remarks for us this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just brief remarks. I would like to thank members of the fire service and in particular Chief Armstrong for all of their efforts in putting together the service levels. Not only was that not an insubstantial undertaking, but it's set a template for the rest of the organization to follow, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Grant, and thank you, Chief, for tackling that, being the first off the line there. So thank you very much. Is there anything else? I think that's it, Mr. Grant. Board calendar. We have the 2025 Q1 forward calendar, and we also have the council resolution tracker. Is there anything in those two documents anyone would like to make comment to or ask about? Seeing none, look for a motion to confirm, for the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council Corporation of Town of Greater Napanee. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, second by Councillor Martin. Ready first, second, and finally passed the 25th day of February 2025. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried, and motion to adjourn. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. We got it in, Mike. Thanks, folks. We had a reasonably heavy agenda tonight, but we got through it, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.